Ready for an adventure? Discover how God is moving in the world today with Byron Easterling and EXP. Gain kingdom insights and explore the limitless possibilities that await.
Well, welcome to EXP. Here we are in Northern California, and we're going to be talking with Brandi Dredge today about her book and her life called Girl Uncoded. Yeah, now I know that a high percentage of my listening audience and watching, whatever you call it, is men. Actually, it's about 65%. But I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity to hear the journey that Brandi was on and how that affected her life, and how, as guys, it's going to affect our lives. And so anyway, I don't want to wait any longer. I think I'll just go ahead and we'll have Brandi come live. And here we go. Hey, Brandi.
Hello.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, and hi to everyone.
Yeah. So we met I was in St. Joe, Missouri, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
And yeah, we were at, is it called Restoration Church?
Restoration, yep, that's correct.
Tim Doyle and his crew. And we had I had a group of people with me that you have now become, to a degree. I mean, I consider you a part of us. And yeah, good. It's always good to check in. I feel
the same way. Yes, I really felt God's hand was on that encounter, which would have been 2019 when you came and did that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty positive it was 19. Sometimes I want to say 18, but no, I think you were February of 2019.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a while back. Okay. And I just remember we were there ministering at Restoration, and you were visiting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think I had something about a book.
You did.
Can you tell me? Yeah, tell me a little more, because I have to admit I don't.
No, that's okay. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it's one of those things that I will never forget. But I totally, I didn't know you, and I had only been visiting that church. I had been trying out some other local churches, and had went to one of their Sunday services before. But then I had heard that the prophetic ministry team was coming in, and I didn't know anything about it. I just thought, oh, this is something that we could do. It was a Friday night, and I thought, okay, I'll go do it. My daughter, she went with me, and so
cool.
I was very thankful to have her there after you called upon me. So I was sitting in the back, and I felt like you were going to call on me. It was like there was this feeling inside me, even though I was way in the back, and there was, we'll say it's a God thing. That feeling on my heart, that it was like I knew you were going to call on me, and then you did. And so that was emotional, just, hearing you say lady in the back. And it was like, wow, okay. Okay, I, to myself thinking, okay, God, I hear you, because it was confirmation. And then everything that you said, you didn't know me, you didn't know that I had written a book. Definitely wouldn't have known what my book was about or anything, but you spoke about identity. And that is what my whole book is about. So every word that you said was like you would have known like what my book was about, which instantly again just confirmed that was coming from God for sure. I mean, there's no other way about it.
Cool.
And what you spoke confirmed things in my heart. I battled with the inner critic a lot, and that identity piece, which was what the whole book was, is about ultimately, is finding that identity. I always say, like, I know we're going to talk about the book, but it's the title's called Girl Uncoded, but which is perfect because it's like I had to uncode the girl inside so that I could become the woman that I was created to be.
Wow.
And, when you're battling those inner critics, I, for so long, didn't think I mattered as a person. So to then think that, to truly believe that this calling that was placed on my heart by God, to truly believe that, I could do this. Yeah. So when you spoke that day, it was like confirmation to all this.
Oh, cool.
Like you're meant to do this. And so, yeah, so thankful for that encounter. And then it's just been, it's just grown from there.
I want to get into your story a little bit. But before I do that, I just want to ask a question. How long was this whole journey? What age did it really start? And when would you say that you came to a point where you transitioned into that place where you talked in a sense of uncoding to become the woman you are?
Sure, yeah. Well, as far as like the book where I really started, when I started writing, that was in 2015, where I started not writing the book because I didn't really realize I was writing a book, but I started journaling. And in 2015, I got to this place where it felt like as much as I said I had let go of my past, like I was in my late 30s and I had been divorced for several years. As much as I had said I had let go of my past, it was like there was still this heaviness, now I know that to be shame that I was carrying with so much surrounding, just all that shame and regret of past choices, past mistakes, just everything. And it was like I couldn't let go of it. And it was like I was still carrying it around with me, even though I would tell people, oh, I'm over it. And it was like, I wasn't. It was like that was still just this heaviness within me. So I started journaling, just trying to make sense of that. Like, what is this? And growing up, it's like I knew of God. We would say our prayers at night. And we went to it, a Baptist church, but we weren't like regular attendees. We would go some Sundays and so I knew of God and all that stuff, but for so long God always just seemed like this out up in the sky, behind this blue curtain, not relational, more maybe transactional, I guess. Is the way that I really viewed God, kind of growing up. I obviously back then I could have never put language to it, but so that's, I guess, where it started for me. Is like I had always carried, I got pregnant at a young age. I was 16 when I got pregnant. And, so I've always been kind of, out of my childhood, because you're instantly, thrown into adulthood. And, I was going through the motions of like life, then later I became a child bride at 17. And then, I was always, I guess, over performing for everybody else and never really taking that time to kind of reflect on myself, and but the one thing that I did realize is that yes, this inner critic in my voice or in my head was just so loud, always just making me feel like that I didn't matter. And so when I started that journaling, I really started to wrestle with those questions, with God. And it was a lot of why God, why, honestly. And I think because yesterday, right before, so just like God and timing, right? So I've been diving into Habakkuk because which that was a hard word to say, so I hope I say that right. But yeah, and I was like, wow, there is some relatableness to that and my story, because it was a lot of like when I journaling and all of that and trying to make sense of everything that had happened in my life, it has been a lot of why God, why, the frustration and the sadness and not being able to understand why certain things happen, and then and then when life has kind of like fallen apart, and that's where we get to in the book, like, because like when life fell apart and you don't really have the relationship and you don't have all of these I'll call them external things, and really it is just you and God. I mean, God is all you have, and so it's like everything falls apart, like that is the constant, and I can still have faith, but I know I'm kind of veering off from the original question, but I'll just keep going, circle it back. But yeah, so I started writing, in that, in that journal, trying to make sense of it. And then the more I was doing that, God really put it on my heart that like I was to write a book.
Right.
Of course, at first I'm like, am I really hearing God? Or is, and then I had went to a women's group one time at the church I was attending. And, simultaneously at the same time, I had started attending that church. And that pastor, the way he spoke about God and scripture and really connected it to things like that we face nowadays, I guess that was the first time that I had really heard it presented that way, or maybe had taken the time to hear it presented that way. Maybe my ears were finally open to be able to hear it, to receive it in the way that I needed to. But he said it in a way that made it all so much more relatable, but then also so relational.
Wow.
And that is what I realized, that is God, is a relational God,
Yeah.
And,
Oh, wow.
and then no matter what you've been through, even when it is hard things, that God loves us.
Yeah. That's good.
No matter what, we're loved.
Yeah.
And it took me so long to really get that down deep. And okay, let me grab my napkin. I should have had this set right there. I am a crier. But it's I do cry a lot, but it's more so tears of gratitude. And, that we have that there can be this, that in the gloom, there can be this glory, that pain can turn into purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things, that is God. And so I kept hearing that calling, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep being obedient to it. And 7 drafts and 8 years later, Girl Uncoded was officially born into the world. So
there was abuse involved in this, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. My story, when I was 16, I met a man who was 24, and he had lived with some boys who I went to high school with, which was how I, had went up to the apartment. Right. And so that's kind of where it starts. And then 4 months later, I was pregnant. And so I was pregnant, like I said, at 16. And then a year after that, I was begging my mom to give permission for us to get married after an attorney who was representing him on some criminal theft charges suggested that if he were to get married before his sentencing, that he could use that to show the judge he was a changed man.
I see. Okay.
He had persistent and prior felonies. And so the attorney thought that would be a way to show the judge, hey, he's changed, new wife and baby.
Yeah.
What I didn't recognize, at the time, over those next 9 years, I would, we would face many financial hardships and struggles, lots of betrayals, and yes, many forms of abuse. And then I would also learn that I had married a sexual predator, which was something that I struggled so hard to even, I just couldn't see it, even after the sheriff who was investigating the sex crime.
So,
go ahead.
So I don't want to get far down this path, but I do want to go, because I think that term is really important to understand from someone who's lived it, is the term sexual predator. Most of us, we don't see that world. A high majority don't see that world, or at least won't admit that they see that world, or whatever. How do you define and you've been there, you lived it, lived through it, and were conquered through it because of Christ. But how would you define that?
For me, a sexual predator is somebody that's preying on children, somebody of adult age, preying on children. There's, preying on children, preying on people who are vulnerable, more vulnerable, because as children, you are more vulnerable. You don't recognize that at the time.
So is there a lot of, obviously that seems to me there would be a lot of manipulation involved.
Exactly. Yes.
And so how that journey had to be, because you talked about shame earlier, there has to be manipulation is coded in shame.
Yes.
So it's, it's like an enveloped, and all the outcomes of walking in a life of forced shame.
Mhm.
I'm not saying you didn't have a part. I'm sure you yourself will, go, oh yeah, I had a part to a point, to a point. To a point.
Yes.
But how did you get through the manipulation, that shame, that manipulation? How did that break? How did that?
Well, that's, as I said, like once I started journaling, and that's where it's like I didn't realize I didn't have the language to put to that what I had been. I didn't even realize that I was in an abusive relationship. Like when you're in it, it is really hard to see. And that is a big part of why I have chosen to share this story, is to help other people see what I couldn't. You can't change the circumstances you're in if you can't see it.
Sure.
And it is really hard to see that when you're in it. So many things, especially after I became a wife, you rationalize so much bad behavior under that guise of marriage. So, well, if I would have just did this better, maybe he wouldn't cheat on me. If I would have just did this better, then, he wouldn't be mad about that. If I would, it's just like where everything went back to me. If I would have did something better, I never, it was really hard to see it as anything that was being done to me. It was more like as if there was a flaw within myself.
Oh, yikes. So, okay. The moment you realized, how freeing was that?
So freeing. I mean, I felt like I was so many pounds so many pounds lighter. And I also felt like that, just like the sky was bluer, the grass was greener. Gosh,
Yeah.
God, it is so good.
Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah, like even things that like would have, really sent me on a spiral, like before the freeing, it was like, yeah, of course, you might get annoyed that something's happening, but there was still always this peace that really, I couldn't understand, the peace that surpasses all understanding. I didn't really even know what that meant until I experienced it. And then I'm like, I get it. Like, I get it now.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, not that we're going to have, or not that we're not going to have, other things that we face, but that there will be this peace, and then there will be this hope that we can cling to. And it's like that it's just there. I mean, it's just there. And that's like, so that freedom piece was like, I mean, I felt like my smile was bigger. I felt like I could walk in the room and not like be second guessing things. Of course, like for myself, my inner critic can be really loud, but it has gotten quieter, or I'm able to like quiet it quicker, than ever before. I'm not stuck in it as long. I mean, there are still times, where we have to still battle it out, but I really surrender that, and
so
help me through this one.
Freedom, the road to freedom is a process, and it's ongoing, because I always think there's new levels and new expressions of freedom. Would you kind of agree with that? So do you have a point in time, that it relates, where you go back? I know for me, when the Lord finally captured, I grew up in a Christian home. I came to the Lord very early, but I walked away from it. And I can take you back to a curve in the road between about 30 miles outside of Mexico, Missouri, where I grew up, where I pulled off the side of the road. And I can tell you, I remember that moment when I said, well, the Lord was asking me, well, when will you stop messing around? So what is there one of those moments that you could, just share?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure. Yeah, there's been many, but one that really sticks out to me was the time that I had went and signed for to finally take ownership of the house that I had been renting from my, obviously through my divorce and thing, had to move, and I had family members who helped me get into a house that I rented, and was working towards trying to like rebuild my credit and get change careers and earn more money and all those things. But so when I finally got to the place where my credit was strong enough to where I could buy the house from them, for me and the kids, and that moment of pulling back into that house that was super tiny, but the house was so full of, like, I can look at it and see all the ways in which God really provided, and so I pulled into that, the back of the house, and it was just to look at that and really feel contentment with what I had. It wasn't the biggest house in the world, and it wasn't, I didn't drive the fanciest car, and, I definitely didn't have tons of money or anything like that. But I felt so much contentment, like, with my life, and like that I had millions of dollars, that's how it felt, like, as if it was, and I don't even know if that's how it would feel if you have millions of dollars, but that's just obviously people that don't have millions of dollars, that's what we equate it to. But
yeah, absolutely.
But it just felt like life was good. Life was good.
Wow.
No matter what, life was good. And so that was a moment that, like, I'll never forget. And then, going in there, and it's like, then you feel, the sunlight splash on your face, and it's, all you can say is thank you, God, because
Whew. That's good. So guys, I want to, this is Girl Uncoded, and you can find her book. You can purchase it at online at Simon & Schuster. I'm sure it's just probably simonandschuster.com, I'm assuming, and put in Girl Uncoded and get your copy. And of course, if you have a local bookstore, if they don't have it in there, it is distributed, I believe, in a number of stores, but all you have to do is ask them, and they'll order it for you. So Girl Uncoded by Brandi Dredge, and just that story of hope and expectation. And I love the terminology, Brandi, that you bring, which is going from betrayal to blessing. And that brings such a positive, and I know every time we've kind of talked about your book and just your life, it's always been, the focus has been on the blessing, but your book has been out for how long now? Just 3?
Out in October, so just it'll be 4 months.
4 months, right? I was going to say 3 or 4 months. Now, have you had any? Because it takes a little while for the book to build momentum and all that, but have you had any responses, any return messages, or anything that just from somebody who's gone, I needed this book?
Yeah, I have. I've been that response has been, it's such a gift. Like when people send you messages to tell what the book meant to them, yes, and that they needed to hear that too, or the ways that they could relate to it. That's just such a gift. So I've gotten several of those, and then some of the book reviews. seeing people's comments where they can see it, again, that abuse that I couldn't see, seeing them be able to put it into that, like, so clearly, it kind of confirms again, those reasons why I believe it was put on my heart to do that, like where you're kind of lifting the veil for others, in the way that maybe I shared the story, to where, unfortunately, there's abuse is common, and the things that I've endured, is not, it's not like it's something that's super uncommon. Unfortunately, I wish we would live in a way, in a world where that wasn't the case. And so, but it's like, I think in a way that I was able to deliver my story.
Right.
I
Yes.
feel like, that there was something in that. And so those comments kind of confirm, not kind of, they do confirm that. And it's such a gift when people are willing to leave a comment or reach out to you, to tell you that, because it's definitely encouraging, and you feel so just thankful that God would put me in a position to even be able to impact one life,
Absolutely. I get that. I mean, when we reconnected after, probably 4 years. And the point is I think you had actually were talking about the book, and just how the time that our team at Restoration, when we were there, had an impact into your life, and gave that some of that confidence, or at least confirmed some things that were in your heart and your mind. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's like, like from that moment, I mean, I never could have imagined, but I'm like, oh, God is amazing. Like, I would have never imagined that then years later, I would be sitting in a room with you all, and that's happened now a few times since the book that came out, the work that I'm doing in child marriage. I got to meet former Senator Holly Rader, which she wrote a book called Cinder Girl. And so same thing, like to get to meet her after, her book touched me, it's just like, wow, like the things that God does and the rooms that, he put you in that, I would have told myself I don't belong in, at all. Because like I said, I just didn't think that I belonged at the table. And, but now I know I do.
Yes, you do. Yeah. That's cool. So I wanted real quick. And also, just so you know, Brandi's website is very simple, which is always good. BrandiDredge.com. Go there. And I suppose you can link right in there to the book as well.
You can. Yeah. It'll take you to, Simon & Schuster page. So that's correct.
Very cool. So, I don't know how to ask this question, but it hit me as you were talking about the moment of freedom, about that you didn't know, you didn't see it. Do you think the guy knew? Did he know, or was he blind? Or how from that perspective, can you speak into that at all? Because that's an odd question, but I have to wonder, is it just blindness? Is it, I don't know.
I mean, that's a great question. I would say, to fully, I can't fully answer that, but in my best guess, blindness is maybe a great way to say that. I mean, I do think, yes, that he knew by way of the actions, what I mean, that he was committing, and the crimes that he was committing. But sometimes I think, and that kind of segues into the work that we're doing, like in child marriage. Sometimes I think people, and I can't speak to all of this, but it's sometimes I think maybe people don't recognize like where we place people that are 16 and 17-year-olds. And I think that I can't, again, wrong is wrong,
absolutely. And I'm surely not saying that anything that happened is right, or
sure, absolutely. And that's what the thing, I think that sometimes I think that in the predatory situation, maybe they don't see it as wrong, like, because they don't see that, even though, you know, we can so clearly see that. And as I obviously, you know, time as I've gotten stronger as a person, you know, I can clearly identify that now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think blindness might be a way to say that, and just like where you don't maybe see that
what you're doing
of a certain age. Yeah, like a teenage girl is a child.
Yes.
And I think if we can't recognize that, back to, like I said, like even with 16 and 17-year-olds, if we can't recognize like how we view our 16, 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds, you know, in most states, you don't reach the age of mature, you know, the age of majority, which is when they, you know, get all the rights of adulthood, where you can sign legal contracts and stuff until you're 18. And so, you know, I didn't come up with the age of 18. Obviously, that's what most people see as the age of adulthood. And so it's like, I really think we have to really be clear, especially in this day and age of 2025. What do, you know, how do we view our kids, particularly those that are 16 and 17-year-olds? You know, I get it, they're close to adulthood, but I think if we don't become clearer and clearer, it creates this line that, you know, we can find ways to justify. And it's like, should we be crossing that, you know? And of course, like with the in-child marriage, you know, often people will talk about the, you know, well, back in the day, my grandparents, you know, or even maybe some of them, you know, married young. And I get it, you know, like back then it times were different. Times were different. And we have to step into where we are now in 2025. And we really have to, I feel, start getting really, really clear about that, you know.
So,
and that, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, I want to go a little further into that, is to, number one, you were just at the Missouri, in Jefferson City, is the state capital of Missouri. You were there meeting with, can you tell us, because that's very cool. Yeah,
we were meeting with, I went down twice and got to testify before the Senate and then before the House, and in support of bills that have been introduced to end child marriage, which child marriage is considered any marriage before the age of 18. And child marriage is still legal in the United States, and 37 states have it to where they can still get married before the age of 18. 5 states have no minimum age. In Missouri, you can get married at 16 and 17-year-old if you have a parental consent, and you only need one parent to sign. So as you can imagine, it just makes this kind of dangerous loophole that girls can be stuck in, because if you're not old enough to sign contracts, which is why the parent has to sign for the marriage, then there can be all kinds of issues when it comes to, if there is abuse, them being able to access a domestic violence shelter, them being able to hire attorneys because they're not 18, so they're not able to contract on a lot of things. So they can be stuck in a marriage that maybe they want to come out of, and they can't even get divorced until they turn 18.
I never thought of that before.
Yeah, so it really makes this dangerous. Like I said, it's a dangerous loophole that kind of keeps them potentially stuck in something that you know, that they just shouldn't have been entered in the first place. And you know, as I said, you know, I was the one begging my mom to sign for us to get married. You know, and at the time, I thought that was the right thing to do.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
like,
you were pregnant. You were, you know, probably thinking good thoughts. You were, hey, this is a good thing. I can't imagine.
And I didn't want him to go away. Yeah, I mean, you know, I loved him. I didn't want him to go away. And, you know, it was like I was, you know, I wanted my family. So, of course, you know, anytime you're, you know, as I said, when the attorney suggested that, it was like, well, okay, you know, like I don't want him to go away. So, but never would I have recognized, you know, because again, I just wanted to get married. So of course I was begging my mom. My dad didn't think it was a good idea, but you know, my mom was able to or signed for me. And that's like, now, I know the guilt that my mom carries from that too. So that's another piece of it,
Oh, wow.
So when we're advocating to end the child marriage, and I'm sharing my story and sharing my testimony, and of course there's other survivors that are there that speak of their experiences and stuff, we know that there's, the times when, two people close in it, they're wanting to get married, when they're close in age. And, we're not saying marriage is bad by any means,
No,
or anything
right,
like that.
right.
We're just saying you need to wait until you're able to be the one to put that name on the line,
Right.
And not somebody else doing it.
You're helping younger, basically what it sounds like is you're saying, listen, we want to help a younger 16, 17-year-old not make a rash decision so that she doesn't ruin her life, in order that when she steps out and they're still together at 18, things are going, you got total right, but you also have all the needed, the weight, as it were, behind you to care better for if things are bad.
Absolutely. Yes. That's exactly how you said that is exactly right. Because we're not saying like you wake up, when you're 18, as we all know, you don't wake up on your 18th birthday with some new wisdom.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah, it's not like you wake up with this newfound wisdom and 18 is the perfect date, or whatever. But you do wake up with all the legal rights of adults.
Yes.
And it's that, and and we've also, as someone that was also a teen mom, it's like I do understand, like, when people say, well, but if they're pregnant, or if they're having a baby, I hear you. And I hear, like, back in the times when, we would do that, but just being a teen mom, that in itself is a life-changing thing. And it's like, could we not just pause on the other and let's, let her experience that is already going to be very challenging for her. Her life is, her childhood is already now coming undone, in that moment of now being, a parent at such a young age. I don't also think that now we need to be like, well, okay, yeah, and now you should now have a spouse. We can, the two things don't have to go hand in hand like that. And I think we're doing a disservice by still continuing to believe that has to be the case. Because it's a lot. Marriage is hard. Being a parent is hard. And those two things,
put all that together at a young age.
Yes.
To be devastating.
And the statistics are bearing that out. You know what I mean? Most of the younger you are when you get married, statistically, you just have a higher rate of divorce. And so the statistics do bear that out, obviously, as well as like financial, hardships. Most of the time, the younger they are when they get married, they don't further their education. That was true for myself. I didn't go on to further education because, in my thinking, I'm married now, and it didn't seem, I thought he was going to take care of me, and I was going to be, so that is typically, rings true, and it did ring true in my life as well. And so, it's just like we can wait until we're 18. We have to wait until we're 18 for many things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So,
and that was the other part, like with being a teen mom, it's like, okay, like when that argument is made, sometimes it's like where it doesn't make sense, because it's like, okay, but even if you become a mom, like anytime, like even if you're a young mom at 16, you can't then go walk in somewhere and be like, okay, well now I want to vote because I'm a mom. You still can't do that. You couldn't vote until you're 18. So
absolutely,
they definitely don't go hand in hand, because even being a mom don't give you those legal rights of adulthood.
Exactly. So thank you. Thanks for spending this time. Just really, I so have appreciated your heart, your story. Thank you for letting me be a part of the book in a little way. And is there anything just kind of on your heart that you would like to close our time?
Well, I do thank you for the opportunity as well, and to the audience or anyone who might be listening. I thank you for tuning in and, you know, spending a little bit of your day with us. And something I do like to say is, do believe in the beauty of who you are, because that was the lesson that it took me so long to learn. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, guys, one more time, I want to. This is Girl Uncoded, and you can find this several places, but you can find it on Brandi's website at brandidredge.com. You can get there. You can go to Simon and Schuster, and I'm sure that's Simon and Schuster. Just Google it. You'll get there. And then, of course, a local bookstore, Amazon, all those places, right? Brandi's website is brandidredge.com. I don't know how much longer it will be Brandi Dredge, but
that's true. Although the website will stay Brandi Dredge. But
it will. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll still do all the creative stuff still under that.
Cool.
Back to I will. Yeah.
So thanks. I'm gonna finish up with one thing, and I just want to say thanks. So hang around for a minute, and I'll be right back. Hey everybody, I wanted to let you know about our farm project. We have a farm project called Pontus, Nicaragua, that began back in 2000 when I was in a town called Bahuaco, Nicaragua, kind of up in the mountains on the eastern edge of Nicaragua. And I just had this insight about a farm project and small farms. And it was an incredible journey that friends Lek and Cynthia Heflin became a part of, and really developed this wonderful farm training program that we're now beginning to take outside of Nicaragua. Nicaragua is doing so fantastic. 5 regions of the country, hundreds of people that didn't have operational farms, now having farms, selling their product, making a sustainable income. And I just wanted you to know more about that. And if you want, you can find more at by going to byroneasterling.com. And there on the Substack, you'll find Farm Project Nicaragua, I believe is what it says. And just click that button and learn a little bit more. We'd love to. And of course, if you have a moment, you can always buy me a cup of coffee. That's always a pleasure. Anyway, thanks so much. Totally enjoyed my time with Brandi, and looking forward to hopefully you guys buying her book, reading her book, and contacting her, letting her know what's happening in your world and how it has changed your life. Yeah, very, very cool. Have a great one.